When I saw you walking up to our house and you had a smile on your face, I was like, Matt, he has a smile. Do you think it's good news? Yeah,
So
you told us in
when
person. You're in shock and you're just like kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're like, okay, we got accepted.
But where's the but? Right.
Right.
I'm going to just let you talk the whole time, just so you know. I'm not going to really talk too much. I'm going to just...
No, stop. I don't like that.
Oh, I got sweatshirts for you and Matt.
Oh, you're so sweet.
And then I also, I was telling Ben too, they're a little bit tighter. The guy said after you wash them like twice, then they loosen up and they feel
I like
nice.
big things. So.
Okay, yeah, they'll loosen up. And then I also got another order that once those come in, they're gray.
Oh.
Yeah. Until I ordered the white, I realized like everyone says the same thing. They're like, I can't, a little speck on here and it's gonna ruin the whole thing. And I'm like, damn.
I know, but it
kids,
looks so
exactly.
good.
It is. White is nice and clean, but
When
yes,
you
to the
don't have
point when you
kids.
have children,
Right.
it's just like a death sentence.
Right. I understand.
Yeah.
I never wear white for that. Well,
yeah.
obviously. Cool. I'll move this over here.
Yeah. Put those over there.
And
See,
I was like,
I don't think anyone will ever be prepared as you are.
Oh, I know. And isn't it so funny how I sent you like not the right thing? I had been preparing like weeks ago, and that was just like my first template. And I was like, oh my God, Cory's probably like, how do I tell her that there's nothing on here? I don't know what to call her.
I was looking and I was like, okay, like, maybe she just has a few things that she'll be able to use as like talking points.
No, I'm like.
And then I saw this and I'm like, oh, she's ready to go for tomorrow.
I know.
Perinatal.
But infertility issues.
I keep saying prenatal, which is clearly obviously 100% wrong. But
well, no. Prenatal,
but isn't that a word though,
prenatal
too?
is when you are pregnant.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, now I'm starting to second guess. No, perinatal mental health.
Listen, I'm sure you.
Oh my God. Hold on.
Don't let me make you second guess. Whatever you're saying, I'm sure is absolutely right.
Okay, hold on. I have to shake out stuff.
Shake it out.
Do you get nervous?
I used to. At this point now, like, I don't get nervous because I know that I mess up. I mean, everyone messes up. You stutter over your words. You fumble over your words.
Your mentor, that guy was just like so natural and great. And
oh, he's amazing.
I mean, like.
Yeah. Don't compare those episodes to anything that, or feel like you get to live up to something.
Like,
he's
just sitting back. He's just like talking.
Just pretend you're out to lunch.
Yeah.
I know. I just have to pretend like I'm just talking to a client. I
That's
never
it.
get nervous.
No.
Talk to everyone.
I mean, I'm sure, like you were saying, I'm sure people that are on like the forefront, like myself and like lenders and, inspectors and all these people that are affected by it, on top of the fact that people that are experiencing it, you know?
Right.
And like, I even was thinking about it too, when we were going through the whole process and like knowing like what you do for a living and like the way that you talk and like articulate yourself. I'm like, wow, like it would be great to have a conversation just because she's feeling and going through what so many people I'm talking to are feeling and going through. I think he's probably been filming since we got in here.
Okay,
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this would be great if he was already just talking. It just seems natural.
Well, yeah, no, that's more so what it's about. But just to be able to have it set up to where I was like, yeah, this is going to, it'll be a good conversation to have because I'm having the same conversation just with a ton of people that maybe just can't express how they're feeling the way that someone who's a professional can.
But that's like also the pressure. Like as I was going through the process, I'm like, all right, Kat, you know how to regulate your emotions. You've been like therapizing people through this. Like you got this,
I was telling Ben I typically time out my haircuts a lot better with these.
Now because?
And I can't because of my schedule. My barber wasn't available. But now I feel self-conscious about my hair.
I think it looks really good.
Do you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I do.
I feel better.
You have good hair.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You look great too.
Thank you.
Ben, you look fantastic too. Just
You
so
look
know.
really good.
I was really just waiting.
Cool. Gucci?
All good.
Awesome. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Closing with Cory podcast. Very special one. I have a very good friend here with me, Katherine McCooe. I'm going to try to give this a proper introduction. She is a licensed professional counselor and a licensed clinical.
Yeah.
And a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor. See, I already messed up, so don't worry about it. She's been working in the field for the last 10 years. She opened up her own private practice in November of 2021. She has a private practice office located in Hillsborough, New Jersey, and her specialization is in perinatal mental health and trauma. So, Katherine McCooe, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
I was talking a little bit before we started recording, or if Ben probably got it, but you and I, number one, we know each other on a friendship level. I obviously know your husband, Matt, on a very good friendship level as well, too. We went through a sale of a condo together along with a purchase of your new home together. And I think that process was awesome because I was able to, talk with you through that, and you were able to give me a lot of insight as far as what you guys were dealing with, emotions wise, and all these things. And I think obviously your career plays a big factor into that, just because you're able again to articulate those things so well. And I think it was just going to be very important to have you on, talk about those processes, because a lot of people that I'm working with are having to do both of those things at the same time simultaneously, just because the market is what it is and people are having to sell in order to buy something. So I think that would be helpful. And then also just to be helpful just to talk about how some of those emotions that comes along with buying a home, selling a home, doing them at the same time can affect a lot of things realistically.
Sure.
So again, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And when we started this process, I was like, oh, I got this. A lot of my clients come to me. There's a huge stressor right now is them just buying or selling.
Right.
So I've been working with clients, at least in my practice, for the last 2 years. I'm like, oh, I got this. Like, I'm a therapist. I know how to self-regulate my emotions. Like, I see my clients going through it. Like, I'll be prepared for this, know? But it is that therapist role goes out the window when you're just a client. And exactly what my clients go through, I definitely went through.
Yeah, firsthand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure like giving the advice and being, I don't want to say not in the driver's seat, but just being able to see it from hindsight. And it's like everything will be, here's what you're experiencing and talking people through that. And then once you get put into the driver's seat, it's like, holy crap, like this is a lot happening at one time. It's hard to really manage and maintain it all.
Yeah, definitely. There were so many times where during sessions I wanted to be like, I get it. That just happened to me this week. But it's not about me. It's about my clients. But I was totally able to relate on so many things.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're also going through another stressor right now, which is you're renovating your home and that whole process. So I feel like it's been one stressor to the next from the last, I don't even know how many months now from when we listed the condo.
Yeah, and then also to add in that I gave birth 8 months ago.
Yeah.
So as I was like thinking of certain things to say, I was like, all right, well, if I could give one advice, it's don't start looking for a house like 1 week postpartum, because your emotions are just going to be a little bit, higher.
Yeah, exactly.
Than most times.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, I would like to start off to figure out where what kind of conversation, and I'm sure you and Matt had, that sparked the idea of, hey, we're going to have to get into the market of buying a home, which obviously is going to translate into also selling our home, on the home front, kind of how that beginning process started out for you guys in particular.
Yeah. Well, I think we could probably relate to a lot of people where I think we started with you, probably over a year ago.
Yeah.
And we had continued to get outbidden.
Right.
And then Matt and I just kept saying, you know what, maybe we'll just wait until the market gets better. When the interest rates drop, the houses just get cheaper.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what everyone was saying. Every time we would tell people that we're looking, they're like, this is the worst time to look. And we're like, is it? Are we making a mistake right now?
Yeah.
But then we just said, you know what, let's just get a house. We can refinance in the future. When the market does get better, then everyone's going to be coming in.
Yeah.
And it's going to maybe be even worse where people are going to be bidding 50 people on a house. So we might as well just do it right now. And then we definitely went for it harder right after we had Jack, our second son, because we were living in this townhouse. It was 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
Every day it was just getting tighter and tighter. So then Matt and I were talking. We said if there's ever a time to make money off of a townhouse, because when we first bought the townhouse, we were like, well, maybe in the future, like we'll rent it, kind of always have it. But we said right now is the time.
Yeah.
I was seeing the townhouses in my area selling for so much more. And I'm like, let's just go for it. Let's just sell this. Let's buy. I don't really foresee the market getting better in the next 6 months. And I do not foresee myself not getting overstimulated in this townhouse with 2 kids, toys everywhere.
Yeah.
And I kept following everything that you put out there, all your content. I was constantly checking in with you and, feeling optimistic that, it can happen right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you touched on a whole bunch of stuff that it's the same conversation that I have with a lot of people. And number one is like the outside influence as far as just to what you said, like even the conversations that we had, I know that there was conversations in general in passing as far as this is the worst time to buy right now. Like, just I guess getting over and getting through that is just such like a pivotal point for number one, for a buyer. The selling side, I guess, not so much, just because you're a little bit more in control depending on what the second step to that sale is. Like, so if you do have to sell and then buy something, you're still going to be in that boat. But a lot of people that I've worked with is they'll do the same thing. They'll be like, hey, so-and-so told me that this is the historical lows right now, or the highs for the interest rate, or this is like the worst time to buy. All those things is such a hard process to get through. And then to your point, as far as, hey, we'll buy now, we'll refinance later. Like that looks like that is like the overall solution, not even to a problem, just to what like the reality of the market is right now.
Yeah.
And I know that we talked about it a bit, and yeah, just to your point too. I mean, we were probably talking for a little bit over a year, which I think is also important too, because some sellers, and rightfully so, they'll reach out to me with a much more like I need to list the house in a couple of weeks type of time frame, and that's not it's not the worst case scenario, but it doesn't really give them the respect of understanding the whole process a little bit and being rushed into the process or feeling rushed like about like the whole process. And then the way that we did it was great because we saw what condos within like that area were selling for, and we saw. I did my research to call the agents that, when they were under contract to be like, hey, how many offers did you wind up getting? Like, was it crazy over asking? Just so then once we were ready, it was like, I think we even had your list price like
higher than what we were originally thinking. Like just waiting those extra couple of months benefited us financially in selling. Yeah.
Yeah. It worked out because we at least were able to have that conversation. And it was also too, I think even like we talked about, it was like, I can't really predict what this house will close for. It's listed for this, but then I was like, wow, this closed for this. So now we can really be able to have a little bit of backing to go in at a higher price than what some of these other, comps close for.
Absolutely. And just even thinking about just the stressors and just selling and buying at the same time, like what we ran into, we were like, wow, we can make so much money on this townhouse. We could put it towards the next house, but then we discuss contingency and how that can affect us being picked. And so I think that was probably a con in this situation, because we would have loved to have that profit up front to be able to buy, because then we would have been able to put more down. Maybe we could have, looked for houses in maybe a slightly higher price range because we had that extra money.
Right.
So I guess if anyone is looking to buy and sell at the same time, not that you can't with contingency. I mean, you made it very clear, like it's possible. It just may take a little longer, or everyone's situation is different.
Yeah.
So maybe you do have that seller that, doesn't have a strict timeline. They're willing to wait around for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But we decided to go not the contingency route.
Right.
And so I guess, people looking to do this at the same time, just making sure that you're financially able to, or have that money set aside, knowing that you won't have that profit that you're making.
Yeah.
Right there.
Right up front. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that plan ahead of time is what I talk to every single one of my buyers about, as far as like, be prepared and understand not only what your price point is, but then also like what that breaks down to as far as like a monthly payment and how taxes affect that. If you're looking within an association, how your HOA is going to affect that. There's so many things that people don't, and they're not going to understand until they speak to a lender or until they really look at like their financial capability and abilities to be able to say, okay, here is what we can comfortably afford instead of just here's what we can afford. But then once this breaks down, it's like, do we want to be so, kind of like strapped when it comes down to what, the monthly costs are with that? I think that was, I think that idea was very important. You guys, like you said, had that ability to go non-contingent. If I'm not mistaken, I think we submitted 2 offers that had the contingency with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
They were denied.
Yeah. And like the contingency thing is just so difficult because there's so many people that are in that same process right now of having to sell their home, having to buy another home. I think it just goes into the timing of the market was very like, how can I say, like it was very kind of like you just had to throw every single thing that you possibly could to try to have one thing stick. And if there was one thing that prevented or was a possibility that was going to cause any bit of hiccups, it's as if like in the history of real estate that people have not been doing this for so long. And I think we even talked about that too. It's like how it gets translated to a seller is so important because they could easily just say, hey, these people need to sell their home. These people they're going to, what happens if the homeowner appraises, what happens if they have issues, which are all, representing a seller, you want to have that conversation. Because even when we were selling your place, I said the same thing where I was like. And
if there was someone who was coming in contingent, I would have been like, throw that away.
Right.
Which sounds terrible because that was the person, like that could have been me.
Right.
But you want to go with not necessarily the highest, but the strongest offer.
Yeah. And I think even when we came into listing your place, we talked about a lot too. I think there was one offer that was contingent for your place. So. Yeah. But for the most part though, that idea of the highest and compared to the strongest is, I would say 10 times out of 10, the strongest is the most important offer to possibly go with.
Absolutely. And then I think also being able to, thank God I had Matt because I'm hormonal a week after giving birth. And I'm like, everything we were walking into, like Matt would give me a pep talk prior, like, all right, Kat, we're just going to look. Don't get your hopes up. Don't say anything to Cory. Just like, we'll discuss when we go back home. And I'm like, of course, honey, of course.
Right.
And then I'd come in and I'd be like, Cory,
this is the one.
This is the one. Put in the offer.
Yeah.
Waive appraisal, waive inspection. Like, just do it. And Matt would be like,
you were like, do you think 100,000 over is a good number? I'm like, a second. Yeah.
And Matt's like, no. And I'm like, okay, you're right, babe. Like, we'll talk about it after. And then I'd whisper to you, like, we're going to submit an offer tonight.
Start writing it up.
Right. And here I am, like, we'll put 100 over. Didn't even know if we had 100 over, but I was so, when you want something so bad and you get to a point where you're so desperate because you're like, I cannot handle rejection again. Yeah. You're willing to just like figure it out.
Yeah.
So thank God I had Matt to like balance that out. Because
Matt is that very calm, cool, collective, like just smooth.
Why I married him.
Of course. Yeah. No, that's great to have like that partnership and like that team type of like mentality. Because there's always like that dynamic of like, I need this yesterday. And then also it's like, well, let's look at the full picture and like, let's just take this kind of step by step.
Right.
But I think in the position, to your point, just having another baby and the house itself, the size of it. You have the Hot Wheels City that takes up 3/4 of your house from your son.
And we've gotten so many more since then. And Christmas, he's having a Hot Wheel themed party in a couple weeks. So,
but I can see how all those factors play in an emotional sense when you're going to go see these houses.
Absolutely.
So like, is it tough? And I kind of know this answer, but just so you can explain it, is it tough to balance more so like the expectation of when we are going to go see some of these properties and like going in and you're coming from a place not necessarily that you don't like, just is that you're ready to move on like to the next step as far as home wise. And then you're coming from that, and then you're going to a place to where you're seeing as like the potential to where it's going to solve all of like the issues that you're experiencing right now, and how to like balance that expectation as far as like not getting too excited, or is that impossible?
I think it's very hard.
Yeah.
Because, you know, buying a house, it's really not just like this financial transaction. Like, it's more than that. Like,
Yeah.
a house represents a lot for people. It's safety, security. A lot of my clients who come in and are stressed out about all of this, they want to be that first person in their family to ever own a property.
Yeah.
You know, like, people use a house as, you know, measurement of like success.
Yeah.
And you know, just a lot of it is like success. Like, look, I bought this house. I can do it.
I was
like,
able to do this. I was able
Right.
to, buy this. That's my, like, I own this. This is my
Yes,
property.
Exactly. And social media doesn't help. You're seeing everyone somehow every week, someone's buying this house, this huge, beautiful house. And you're just like, how are they doing it?
Right.
Like, did someone help them?
Yeah.
You know, where did they get this money? Like,
Yeah.
how many bids were on this house? How much over? And
Right.
even people you haven't spoken to in a while, you just want to message them and be like, how'd you do this?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I feel like we're pretty well off and we have that
Yeah.
money, and like, it's not happening, you
Yeah.
know? So I think seeing everyone's experience on social media, and also what you just want to give to your kids, right? If you're a parent, you're just like, I want to be able to get you guys something that you're going to love. And you just, as soon as you walk into this house, you're just envisioning, like, automatically you create this future already.
Yeah.
And that's why when a bid doesn't go through, it's not just, oh, whatever, there's more houses out there, like,
Yeah.
it'll be fine. It's more than that. Like, you really are grieving the loss of something that you created very quickly in your head.
Yeah.
You know, so like,
wow, that's a really good way of putting it, as far as like, yeah.
yeah, you're grieving a loss. And, you know, as soon as I walked into the house we ended up buying, I mean, it was like Mad Men era 1950 style. Nothing had been touched. It
Right.
had only been owned by one person.
Yeah.
But I like saw, well,
You had the vision though, the
had
second you walked in, yeah.
Absolutely. It's so funny because I said to my husband, don't worry, like, we're not going to like renovate this immediately. We can take our time. Second we bought it, we've gutted everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I walked in, I was like, the yard, you know, I came from a townhouse where it just had a deck. So I would have
Yeah.
been fine with just like a little patch of
Right.
grass, but it had this beautiful yard. You know, it had this full basement, like
Yeah.
triple the size of mine. I like imagined Grayson's Hot Wheel City all there. You know, the boys would have had their own bedrooms. We had garages. Like, I just automatically was able
Yeah.
to like see my family and their
It
future there.
checked off most of, if not
Yes.
all, the boxes that you guys have been
Yes.
speaking about.
Yeah. And so, you know, I said to Matt, like, if we don't get this, like, I'm going to be so sad.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. Like, I envision this future, and, you know, buying, you're really, you're going through like the stages of grief. Like, clinically, if you look at this, you know, there's typically, you know, 5 stages of grief. You have the denial, which is like, I can't believe we didn't get this. Like, this can't be happening. Or it's more just like, I haven't heard from the realtor. So like, no answer is.
Don't put it on me.
Yeah, no. But
No,
it's just
I
like,
know,
all right,
yeah.
Cory hasn't reached out. Like, maybe we did get this house.
Right.
Like, there's no way we can't get this house.
Yeah.
Like, no news is good news, you know?
Yeah.
And then you find out you didn't get it. And then you're angry. Like, I cannot believe it. Like, I put up so much over asking. I waived everything. How could they, you know, not pick us?
Yeah.
And then you go through the bargaining stage of grief, which is, we should have offered more, you know, or we should have waived this, or we should have done this.
Right.
And then you hit the depression stage where you're just feeling hopeless, like, this is never going to happen.
Right.
Why was I born in this generation? You
Right,
know,
right.
and then of course you see everything on social media, and you're
Right.
just like, this just, you're just sad.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
crying a lot.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then you hit the acceptance stage of grief, where it's like, okay, you know what? It just wasn't the time. What's meant for me will come.
Right.
And you begin getting hopeful again, or you're back on Zillow and you're like, wait a second, I found something so much better,
Yeah, yeah.
actually. You
Right.
know, I'm glad this didn't work out.
Yeah.
And so when you think about it, every time you get rejected, every time someone doesn't pick you, you're perceiving it as rejection. And those rejection feelings are loss. And then it also triggers, I mean, even though it's not, you know, real estate related, just all of the other times in life where you got rejected. So
Right.
all of those feelings start to
or
resurface.
feeling like, why is my and again, you're the therapist here. I'm just
Yeah,
I've been in therapy for a very, very long time. So I could imagine it being something where it's like, well, why am I not good enough to be accepted for this
Yes.
offer or this house?
Absolutely. Because I think a lot of people these days, like we had said before, like house represents a lot for people. And
Right.
we a lot of the times view like money equals our worth too, like success equals worth. And
Yeah.
right, like what is wrong with me? Something must be wrong with me that
Right.
or I can't give what people want. And so
Yeah.
I'm not good enough.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Again, I'm going to try to not make it a personal therapy session, but I can
No,
definitely
it's
go
all
off
right.
a little bit. But no, I wrote down some things because
Yeah.
you mentioned about social media, which I agree like so much. And it's tough because in my business, I try to market that success. And like
Right.
I try to make it to where it's not like unreasonable or it's not to where I'm trying to like paint this picture of like all it is success and it's so easy and here it is. Like I try to also, especially like when I'm doing the podcast, I try to talk some more about like those failures or like the learning process or trying to get things kind of figured out that didn't really go the way that I was hoping for. But social media is really, really tough because I'm not going to post, oh, hey, I got 4 of my buyer's offers were rejected this week. I'm going to just post, hey, my one buyer is under contract now, my one buyer just closed, or my one seller just accepted a good offer. So it is just portraying just the highlight reel of what's going on. And it's not having a lot of like that background. So to that point, for that person, because I can imagine that. And like I've even been in that position too, where it's like, how did this work out? But this didn't work out. And then it's like, okay, I also don't know the whole story that went along with this. And like after going through all of it, then it made me kind of realize that. But I can see a buyer almost becoming, I don't want to say jealous, but a little bit angry of the fact of like, why is everybody else seeming like it's so
sure.
easy and I'm over here having such a hard time
Yeah.
just, and offering everything that these people are asking
Everything
for and
you
more.
own. Like
Yeah,
here,
yeah.
have it all.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I do think jealousy is a very natural feeling.
Yeah.
And I never, tell my clients like, it's not a good feeling. Like I never shame it because I think it's a very natural feeling that we can't control. And I guess it's how quickly do we bounce back from that? Like
Yeah.
how long do we sit in this feeling, right?
Right.
And that's where practicing gratitude really makes a huge difference. You
Yeah.
know, like just being grateful that you're even in a position where you can be looking for houses,
Right.
and grateful that you at least have a house. It may not be the house that you want or a huge house, but right now you have a roof over your head,
Yeah.
or you have parents where you're able to live with them in between, you
Right.
know, and just reminding ourselves of all that there is to be grateful for, because it's really easy during this process to look at all the things you don't have, especially when
Yeah.
you're on Zillow and you're just like, I want that house, but it
Yeah.
is way over my budget.
Right,
You're
right.
hanging out on Zillow every day at night when you're
Yeah.
vulnerable, tired after a long day of work,
Mhm.
and then you're laying in bed looking at Zillow and
Yeah.
just getting sadder.
Yeah.
You know.
And then I'm sure matching that up with social media, it's just like a perfect duo
Yeah.
of just depression, basically.
Definitely. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's going to bring up those feelings of, I'm not worthy, or just restlessness, like difficulty sleeping.
Yeah.
You're constantly just checking your phone. Like every time you would call me, I'd be like,
Right,
Cory's
right.
calling. And you'd always start off the phone call with, it's not a bad thing. Just have a quick question. Or
Right,
you'd
right.
start your emails or with like nothing bad.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're constantly just fixated and you become obsessed,
Yeah.
about this process.
Right.
Because you're in limbo. No one likes to be in limbo.
Right.
And, anxiety and depression come, a lot of it stems from just things that you can't control and the unknown. And
Yeah.
that's literally what buying and selling is.
Yeah.
We can't control the market.
No, you're absolutely
We
right.
have no idea what's going to happen.
Mhm.
And people don't like to sit in those feelings.
No. Yeah. And you're right. Like that whole process is just the complete unknown. And as far
Yeah.
as what other people are offering and what is going to be out there and how things are going to be. And, even from what you said as well, too, I put 2 other notes down. But the bargaining point of the grief that you were talking about, I think that I connect with that because if there's one thing, and we've gone through this, a couple of times from the offers that we didn't get accepted, but if there's one thing that I tell all my buyers is that you want to submit whatever you're most comfortable with, and then you want to submit something to where if you weren't chosen, there's not like that what if, right? Like you're, and I know it's easier said than done, but when it comes down to as far as I feel like a financial point, it's like, unfortunately, that's where it's like kind of black and white. So what can you realistically comfortably afford? And then also the other points of it are what you're comfortable with. Are you comfortable, limiting inspections? Are you comfortable knowing and understanding what it comes with as far as appraisal wise, right? And like that's even something too when buying that, those things that have happened that you experienced that a lot of the people like that I'm talking with, I just want them to understand it's like, I'm not trying to force you in any way, shape, or form to go outside of your comfort zone, because then what's going to happen is it gets accepted and then it's like, oh my goodness, like an overwhelming, like, is this too much for me? Is this more than I should have done? And I think that regardless, you may feel that way because it's a feeling of like, all of that doubt kind of just gets erased, and then now it's like the opposite of now, like, did I make the right decision? Is this,
Absolutely. I mean, I've had a few clients who have had like buying regret.
Yeah.
Where they're like, I was just putting a ton of offers out there because I was so desperate and I got picked and I'm not really fully loving this house.
Yeah.
And I have this huge mortgage payment now and I'm kind of stuck.
Yeah.
But then in that situation, it's kind of like, okay, well, how can we make you love this house? Like, I think it also takes time for us to make a house a home, you know, and looking at what really makes a home,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do with, my clients like comparing the houses that they end up getting to other people's houses, or then going on Zillow a week later and saying, why wasn't this house available when I was looking? What if something
is better? That is that's a very tough conversation for me too, because same thing, like that's the unknown. It's like I have an answer when someone asks that question, but in my mind too, I know that there's only so much that I can say when they say like, well, what if something else, comes up? Right. And I'm like, I get it. Like that's always going to be something though that you'll be able to think about.
Right. And, in our situation, when we, the house that we ended up getting, when I walked in, I saw the vision. But as soon as we got accepted, every time I continued to walk back in, that vision was slowly fading. I would look at Matt and I'd be like, is this the right?
Yeah.
Like, did we make the right choice? Like, what are we doing? What makes us think that we can just buy a house that needs to, I mean, it was livable, don't get me wrong, but just everything was outdated. Like everything. And, I kept thinking of how I was saying to him, like, don't worry, like, I'm not gonna, because when we first walked into the house, he was like, Kat, I know you. You're gonna want new bathrooms. You're gonna want new everything. I said, no. Yeah. We will take our time. We'll pick one project every year. I promise.
3 days later, you had the bathroom guy there.
Oh my God. And that's where it gets overwhelming. So I guess it's like really setting that personal boundary and expectation of what you guys are going to stick with, because I think that's where things got very overwhelming for us because, I kept saying like, did we, buy something that was totally more than what we could handle? You know, we've never renovated a home, can't afford an interior designer. Now I gave everything to this home, and then, like you said, a couple days later, we had contractors coming in, like, what's the quote for this? And every time we get a quote, I'd be like, oh, not too bad, Matt. Like, not too bad. And he's like, Kat, that's one of like 20 projects.
Yeah.
So I think that was, I guess, setting the expectation, like, if you are going to buy a fixer-upper, are you able to renovate it, or will you be okay living in the conditions that it's in for a while until you can down the road? And talking to your spouse about that, because that can get a little tense sometimes. Like, Matt's like, Kat, it's not a big deal. I'm like, I will not go pee in that bathroom unless you renovate it,
And like with that house too, and everything is a little bit different, but understanding, to your point, it was older in the sense to where it was like, okay, like what has gone on in this bathroom that, some Clorox isn't going to really get that out of here. Not anything bad in that sense, but just the fact that it's been around for a very long time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that wallpaper, normally,
Yeah.
you just want to relax when you go to the bathroom. It wouldn't have been a relaxing environment.
Yeah, it was a tense environment in there.
Right.
All right, let's take a quick break to talk to you guys about title insurance. You may not know this, but when you're buying a home, there's a lot of work that goes into getting to your closing, including title insurance. Title insurance is the financial protection due to property defects for mortgage lenders and home buyers. But let's keep it simple. For over 15 years, Simplicity Title has been protecting buyers with their expert teams working on all the documents to get you through a closing and a fraud protection process that keeps your money safe. You can check out Simplicity Title's profiles on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, or go to learn.simplicitytitle.com to find out more about them. Want to talk to someone? Call 877-848-5320 or send an email to info@simplicitytitle.com. Tell them that Cory Fandel sent you. One of the main things that I really like when I was sending some stuff over to you was that we already talked about, but was that like emotion and that sense after getting like that phone call that the offer wasn't accepted. And for me, it is such a tough conversation to have because number one, it's my job to be able to like represent these people. And it's something that out of everything, like I take very, very serious in the sense where I was like, I want to present this in the best possible light. I want to have everything kind of listed out and ready to go and highlight all of like the great points. So when I do that and when I'm confident that this is okay, like I never want to give false hope, but I'm like, we have a really good shot here. Mm-hmm. And then that unknown of just not knowing, is a cash offer going to come in? Is someone going to go, 55,000 over asking instead of 50,000 over asking? It's such like an odd position to try to like walk these buyers through because again, it's like the unknown of it. But having like getting that either that email from the agent or that text or the call saying, hey, sorry, your people weren't chosen. And then trying to get some feedback because not that it matters, but at least providing like, hey, we didn't get chosen because I think like that first part of we didn't get chosen and then it just shuts off. It's like, I don't even really give a crap why. It's just all I heard is we didn't get accepted. Right. So yeah, sure. Someone offered 60,000 over. So then it's like, okay, now it goes back to, I wish I had more to put down, or I wish I had more of like an affordability standpoint, or someone put down cash. And it's like, well, why don't we have someone that can just give us all this cash? And it just brings up, so like, just like that initial conversation of, I'm sorry, we didn't get accepted is just, it's tough for me because I've had that conversation sometimes 10 times with buyers or 4 times, 5 times. We had it probably 3 times when we were working together. Right. But there's not really a good way of like leaving that conversation off. And like I think about it as far as like a T-ball coach where it's like, okay, well, we'll get him next time. We'll get out there and we'll do whatever. Because I know it's like, these people love this house so much. And I'm calling them up with probably the worst news of the week. And like, I get there's a lot of positive stuff, but still like this is going to be a tough one.
This is tough for you, like not to make this into a therapy session,
Please do
but
it.
Like this being your job, we take our job. That's like half our identity, our jobs. Right. And we measure a lot of our worth in how good are we at our jobs.
Yeah.
And though this is completely out of your control because you're just in this situation passing along the message to
I'm like the middleman.
You're the middleman. It has nothing to do with your worth, at all. But then knowing that you are disappointing your clients and what are they thinking about you or nothing's working out for any of my buyers, like is there anything I could be doing differently? Like definitely. What does it say about me? What if they end up just leaving and going to someone else, but really none of this is in your control.
Yeah. And that's a great point because I do feel like that. Like, and I can say I don't take it personally, but there's a level to it that I do take personally just because I think that too. I'm like, could I have done something differently? Can I have had a better conversation? At the end of the day, there's times where I know maybe the offer that I'm submitting for some of my buyers may not be the strongest, but I still try to highlight it to where it can be in that running. But yeah, like I'm just provided whatever I'm provided and I try to relay it to them. And then they always say like, don't shoot the messenger. But there's been times in the past that people have taken it to where it's like, well, you're not doing something right.
Right.
And like, there's people that have like, worked with other agents afterwards. And like, I used to take it personally to where I was like, this is out of my control and like try to defend it. But then like, I understand too, all these things that we're talking about, that this is such like an emotional process where it's like, I get it. Like if they needed somebody to blame in that moment and I was the easy pick to be like, well, clearly it's you. We submitted 4 offers with you and 4 offers got rejected and like you're not doing something right. It's like, okay. Like I know that I'm doing absolutely everything above and beyond that I can be. But if that's what you need to make this make sense, then I'll be that person that you can, just do whatever with. But yeah, those combos are definitely difficult. And same thing, like I always do think like, could I have done something better? And then I think a lot more too, where I'm like, I wonder what kind of conversations like they're having on the other end of things. And like all those things that you listed makes total sense. Because there's people that I work with after that 3rd or 4th one, you can almost see and feel the like, just like how like the mood has shifted during like these showings to where it's like, oh yeah, no, this is really nice and like this and this. And I'm like, like they lost that spark just because now I feel like they're trying to protect themselves and not be too excited. But now it's like,
which then doesn't make this process fun when you're in that stage. Exactly.
Like it affects so many different things. And then it also brings a little bit of negativity because then now it's like, some people will turn to where, well, now let me be like a little bit more like strict on like what my guidelines are for what I want in a house. And then that also brings it down for people that are like, well, actually, I just don't give a crap. Like if it's got walls and doors and working, I'll do it, which then can translate to them having that buyer's remorse like you were talking about or having. So there's so many things like integrated within the process of that buying that affects people differently, and it just depends on how they're able to really handle it.
Yeah. And then, you just imagine like when they come home after going to see all these houses, it's really hard to be present at home, especially if you have kids, to just like come home and be like, hey, kiddos, like, how are you? And you're just so beat and so feeling so hopeless.
Right.
And it makes everything hard,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, and I think dealing with life on top of that, I think on here as well too, like the time that is put into buying a home and selling a home is like you need to take off of work for however long you need to just to be able to handle both of those.
Oh, it is like having another full-time job, especially when you're doing 2 at the same time.
Yeah.
Especially if you're buying somewhat of a fixer-upper, because then you have those added contractors coming in to get you quotes, so you kind of know what to ask for or, what you will expect after you get the house. But I mean, I'm lucky in the sense that my clients are awesome. Sometimes I'd be like, can I just move you to this time? Because I have someone coming to my house to inspect, and they were so great with it. Like I have more flexibility, and I know not a lot of people have that.
Yeah.
And then my husband works from home at times, so that was helpful.
Yeah.
But it was very hectic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
And I think too, almost like to wrap up the buying side of things, and then we could talk more about the selling side. But for the buying side, a little bit of a good talk then. So after this, after the offer got accepted, that for you guys, like that initial was, I feel like when we were talking, I feel like you didn't really, I don't want to say believe it, or like kind of understand what was going on.
Oh.
And I feel like it's very normal because people are used to the opposite side of that conversation where it's like, sorry guys, let's keep looking. And then this time it was like, hey, we got accepted. This is great. Let's get into attorney review and get things moving.
You're in complete shock. And when you come from a state of anxiety, like if you don't already have anxiety to begin with, which face it, we all have anxiety on some level, right? Well, then you get an anxiety disorder during this process.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So when you came in and when I saw you walking up to our house and you had a smile on your face, I was like, Matt, he has a smile. Do you think it's good news? Yeah, so you told us in person.
When I was driving to your house when we were doing something for the condo, she had called me and she let me know. I think we had to make a small adjustment to the offer. That wasn't going to be a big deal at all. And I think that if we did that, it was like, boom.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when you're coming from a state of being so anxious, you're in shock and you're just like kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're like, okay, we got accepted.
But where's the but? Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like until you're kind of like, like I just kept thinking something's going to come up in inspection or something's going to go wrong here. Like, I don't really know if this is going to work out. Like, we've been rejected so long, like based off of our history of rejection. Things never are working out with this. So you just remain cautiously optimistic.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it because I try to portray that to the buyers too, especially when their offer first gets accepted, because it hasn't happened a lot, but there are one of which really, really stands out to me, which was a terrible experience for my buyers. It was a terrible experience even on my end representing them, to where we had an offer accepted. We were in attorney review. We were literally probably one letter away from just concluding attorney review. And the agent called me up, and right off the bat, I could just hear it where it was like, yeah, I got some not so good news. It's like and this is before the crazy market, but it was like, we wound up getting another offer that was like $40,000 more than your offer. Now, granted, this was back when we were able to negotiate a little bit. So it wasn't even like they were already over. They were at a pretty good price point. And that $40,000 was going to just put them over their budget. They weren't going to be able to match it. Yeah. And it was just such a crappy situation to where I had to have that conversation, walking up smiling, saying, guys, congratulations, we got the offer. And then I had to call them up and be like, any chance you can come up with $40,000 extra dollars? Because if not, then we're going to lose this house, actually. And it was tough because it taught me a lesson. It also reminded me that I always call it like mini celebrations when we get the offer accepted. Let's clap for a little bit, but then also we have to get into attorney review, which is this next kind of step, which is, again, a little bit out of our control because now we're adding 2 more entities into the mix of people who are just looking at things black and white, just looking at the contracts. They have I don't want to say they have no emotion, but I'm sure like with it was very much so, well, what's best for this? What's best for that? Like, I don't really care about all like the in-between stuff.
Their job really is to like freak you out to protect you. Because I remember going to my attorney and being like, by the way, we're getting this house. We waived everything, so don't worry. And he was like, what?
He's like, wait a second.
I was like, no, we waived everything. I didn't want him to tell me otherwise, but then they have to tell you.
They have to tell you the worst. What is the worst possible turnout to adding this into the contract? And it's great because I love, if there's anything that I like about that, is that educate them as much as possible. And with that education is going to be coming a little bit of like, you're going to scare them. So that's kind of comes along with it. But also too, let's just look at the bigger picture, which unfortunately the reality of it is that if this language isn't included in the contract, we're not going to get the house. Like there's really not a way of going around it. But also here are the things that make you feel a little bit better as far as what we could have grounds with going, if it's the inspection, if it's the appraisal, kind of understanding all that, which you guys experience on both sides of the appraisal and the inspection to understand that, what was going on with it. But yeah, there's the acceptance phase, there's the attorney review phase, you go through it, and then it is, I guess, the anxieties of both the appraisal, obviously the inspection. Now, I know that I obviously send out something prior to inspection just to say, hey, it's going to be a very stressful day. Someone is coming in there to tell you every single thing that's wrong with your house. I don't know how people, like how you, maybe even for you guys, how serious you guys took it, because then I feel like you get there and it's just, you're just getting smacked in the face.
I cried so much. Actually, that day you had someone else. From
Louisa,
Louisa,
that's right. Yeah.
She's so great.
Yeah.
There, and she didn't know me at all. And she's probably like, oh my God, this curl's unstable. But they just kept finding things and finding things. And I mean, the inspector did say, I love inspecting old homes that everything is exposed because you're going to know everything up front. And this is good. You don't want to move into a house, finally get in, and then find that all these things are wrong with it. So everything was just really exposed in this house. Yeah. And then you go home and you're like, did we do the right thing?
Right.
So inspection day is hard.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. And I know that I try to tell people, like, after inspections, like, try not to think about it, take a night off, which is an easy thing to say on my end, but on the buying side, you're probably just relaying everything that the like a reel of what the inspector was saying that's wrong with the house, basically. And like from there, then it's like, okay, now all these issues are understood and they're talked about. So like now let's go through our due diligence to figure out, fixes to all these issues.
Right.
Which you guys were, I mean, very, very diligent at, in the sense of just and I think that the way you guys did it was the best way, because at that point you probably knew that house better than someone who lived in it for 60 years.
Yeah. Now I walk into the house and I know, especially because we have renovated it all. We're almost done in the final stage.
Yeah.
I know now that everything is good.
Yeah.
And it will last for the next 50 years with no problem.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
That process of it goes, I think not every buyer deals with it. We dealt with it a little bit to where there had to be that second round of negotiations after the inspections, which to the point that we said before, where there's a little bit more, I guess, emotion involved on the real estate end, not from like a financial perspective to where it's like, I want to keep this together so I can get my commission check, but more so like, I know I've been there and talked, and I know how important and how this house is for them, to where then like on like the attorney end, it's like, hey, here's what's wrong, here's kind of what we want, and then it's just very like cut and dry.
Right.
So like the way like that's relayed, so then just like that whole dynamic that we went through was another experience as well too. But once that was all finalized, and then once closing day kind of came, I feel like it was still, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it just didn't seem like it like really settled in.
No, especially because there were so many things we kind of had to do before we could actually sleep there.
Right.
And so they give you the keys, and now you're just like, great, we've made it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is going to be really expensive.
Yeah. Like, I'm sure just getting in there and looking around and just being like, wow.
But you know what? This is, prior to this, we had a condo and then the townhouse. But to like finally get a house, that day I could have seen on social media any other house that was 4 times the size. I didn't care. I was so proud of this house. Like, we made it. There was a time, when we were looking at how the market was, and we were like, we don't know if we'll ever be able to get a house. Like, we had our townhouse, we owned it, but a house with like land, and, you think you're doing everything right. You're working hard. You're doing it all right. And you're just like, I don't understand like why we can't get this. And then you just are pissed that you were born in this generation, that you have student loans, and, the list goes on. But there was a point where we kind of were talking about accepting that we may just be in our townhouse. Forever, or for a really long time. So to get this house, it was such a like, you do measure your worth a lot with what you have. It's like, we're now worthy.
Right.
We did this,
It's like an accomplishment, and it's just feeling accomplished and feeling like what I set out to do, we did it. Like, here is like the prize after like the entire, situation that we just had to deal with. And then on, adding the selling portion of it into play, I think that, it was a pretty smooth process, for you guys, luckily. And I think the way that we went about it, in the sense of learning a lot about the market leading up to it, and just understanding like the area itself, and then also just trying to keep things realistic to where, okay, we kind of know, we have an idea of what to expect. And even though I think the offers that came in, a few of them were a little bit above what we were even thinking, but it wasn't, we had a really good sense of kind of what was going on with it. To where once that process was at least far enough along as far as, being accepted, you guys did everything that you needed to do for the townhome. So you kind of had a bit of an understanding aside of the radon thing as far as what was going to be going on with the house and what was going to be coming up and stuff. But there's always a little wrench to be thrown into things.
It's funny too, because coming from just buying our house and all the things that had to be fixed and the things that the sellers didn't agree on or meet us with. And me remembering how rejected and sad I was for these buyers, I remember I was like, Matt, we're going to do whatever we can for them. And Matt's like, whoa, Pat, this, we want to gain financially as much as we can. Like, we're not just going to say, we'll redo the whole deck for you. And I'm like, but I know how it feels. Like, I'm now putting myself in their shoes. And I'm like, I want to just make it as smooth as possible.
Yeah.
But that's why thankfully I have Matt, because he's like, Kat, we're not going to just rebuild our whole house for people, you know, but it was a very smooth process.
Yeah. And even with that too, I feel like that's the one end of it. I think a lot of people could also see that from another end to say, these people didn't do anything for us when we were buying a house, so I'm not doing anything for anybody for when they are coming here. And especially, like you said, measuring what it was. And you know, the radon thing is what it is, but for like just using examples of like, if there's minor things that someone's asking and then you guys just came from a situation where it's like, you know, structural things that need to be in question, this, that, the other thing, it's like, I'm not going to even be bothered with this little kid stuff. Like we have much bigger issues that it's very easy to, you know, have your own experiences kind of dictate how you're going to, I guess, engage with somebody else and how they view their things. Because, you know, this may be someone's, you know, the townhome may be someone's first home and it may be them going through a whole process and they probably maybe have their parents saying one thing or they're being influenced by all these. So they're going through their own process. And then, you know, someone else is going through theirs, and like how those kind of connect is always, you know, interesting.
I was the person that just had that much more empathy for them. I mean, I'm an empathetic person to begin with.
Yes, you are. And I think also your job probably has that. Yeah.
But I just wanted to make it as easy as possible to prevent some like emotional trauma to others.
No, for sure. And like, you know, the sale happens, the closing happens on your home, renovations obviously start, but was there, like, do you know about how, if it may still not feel settled, but do you know how long until you finally felt like a little bit of like a calm from the whole, like, lack of a better term, like storm that you guys went through between the buying, the renovations, or like the quotes, the estimates, the selling portion of it, moving, switching things over, all that stuff, to where it's like, I kind of feel a little bit like calmer now?
So I'll be honest with you, because I think about this often, because I talk about it often, because even right now we have contractors over. It definitely feels like home. I don't think 100% it does yet. I mean, we're in like our phase 2, like we're almost done, but I think the spaces that we're actually living in are complete. So I think once I was able to actually hang things on the wall and actually build my son's nursery and just, you know, I think it's more hanging on actually having people over and being like, this is our house, and like hosting dinners, and now we're making these memories. And so I definitely feel like 80% right now. It feels complete. I think once everything else is done, because I mean, having to deal with the township and the permits and
it's a nightmare.
It's just like phase 2 of the aftermath of buying, you know. But it definitely does feel very homey. I think hanging things on the wall, having people over, so making memories in there, and especially after you pay your first mortgage payment, which is definitely higher than a townhouse. You're like, okay, it's pretty permanent. Like,
this is happening.
I own this now. I do think I would say it probably took about like a month or so afterwards.
Gotcha.
You know,
and like a transition, no matter what, is going to have like an unsettling feeling, just because I feel like everyone is a creature of routine and habit. So it's like, okay, you guys were sleeping in this same bed and having a routine of, you know, going and, you know, getting your son or, you know, getting breakfast and all this stuff. And then now you're in this thing where it's like, all right, now I have to figure out how to do this somewhere else where it's not exactly complete. So I'm not doing it to like the routine like that I'm used to doing. So for me, at least, I'm saying like, I can see how that would affect me. So I get like, for people that are dealing with that same thing, to where for sure.
And then when you have kids, you know, my son, who's like, so where are all my toys? And I'm just like, I'm sorry, buddy, they're still packed up in the garage. We can't unpack everything because not everything is ready. So it's like you have that constant reminder, and he's constantly like, well, can you go find me this one toy? So then you're going in the garage, you're looking in the boxes. So you don't feel I won't feel fully settled until there's no more boxes.
Right.
But
I'm the same way as well, too.
we're so close to that.
Yeah.
So I do have to just remind myself, like every day, it's like a practice of like reminding myself to be grateful that we have the house. And, 8 months ago, this is what I was dreaming for,
Right.
So.
Yeah, 100%. I think going through all that, and I think looking into, I talked about it last week for the podcast, but going into 2024, if there's ever a time that there's an unknown, I think it's right now, and especially going into next year, between the rates, between the inventory, between buyers' affordability, between sellers that refinance that are like, why would I want to sell when I refinance at 3.5% and now they're at whatever. So there's so much that's like going on right now that I guess like from your perspective on how to try to maybe manage or gauge like the emotional factors that are going into next year for a buyer or for a seller, because you just experienced both of them.
Yeah.
Just what, if any, advice that you would be able to give to have somebody kind of be like, okay, like that makes sense. Like I'll utilize that.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little biased with this first advice, but therapy. I think therapy is such a great outlet. Like find yourself, and it's self-care too. You're committing yourself to 1 hour a week to just talk about these stressors, right? Because therapists, well, I guess I could speak for me. I'm going to help normalize it all for you, you know? So I think just therapy, having the outlet to talk about it. I think really just setting that personal boundary for yourself and being on the same page with your husband of what really is our budget, like what will we really be comfortable with, so that you can, really not get your, not change your mind when you're out there. Say, you know what, we'll put 50 over, and then get stressed out. So really just setting that personal boundary of what your limit is. I'll always talk about like self-care, like just taking care of yourself, like your basic needs, like getting outside, getting sun, nourishing your body, disconnecting. Like just, yes, I know you have to stay connected on your phone in case like your realtor reaches out and stuff, but just disconnecting, like stay away from social media, technology, just, do the basics, just like go to bed early, like read a book, escape your current reality and like enter into someone else's in a book. And just practicing gratitude. It's really easy to focus on all the things that you don't have and all of the things that you want, but being able to focus on like what you do have. And that's easy to, put aside or not see when you're in this process. I agree. Because like even every morning for me, I try to write down, 7 to 10 things like that I'm grateful for. Certain mornings, it's a lot more difficult than others. Certain mornings, like it's like I'm grateful that I have coffee, that I can somehow get myself into a mindset to start doing some stuff today. And other days, it's a lot easier to recount like the things like, but I agree that when you're in it, it's very tough to your point, to disconnect from it, because it's probably like for these buyers, it's like, okay, waking up, let me check my emails to see what properties got sent over. Let me also double check on Zillow. All right, let me, do whatever, see on social media. Maybe, God forbid, someone bought a home like the night before and you see the pictures and it's like, oh, great. Happy for them, kind of. Also hate life because that's not me right now. So there's just, you're constantly, when you are that connected, you're constantly almost like reminding yourself of almost what you don't have and what other people do have. And it's just, that could be very, very difficult. I also strongly advocate for therapy because that's been something that has helped me throughout, life. And I think for people that, instead of thinking about it on a day-to-day basis, being able to talk about it for 1 hour a week makes a huge, huge difference for sure. Absolutely.
Social media, and that is, for what people are posting, is tough to, I guess. Everyone knows at the end of the day that you're not going to post a sad picture. Right. Obviously, God forbid, knock on wood, someone passes away or something happens. You're going to do like a memorial type of thing, but you're not going to post a bad day. Or you're not going to post about, something bad that's going on unless, you want to get an attention from that. But even that is still, correct me if I'm wrong, like a coping mechanism for what someone's kind of even going through and dealing with. So the social media thing is just something that I'm sure everyone battles with. People are probably a bit more aware of it than others.
Right.
But if you don't realize that what these people are posting is just what people want to be perceived as, or want others to perceive them as, like you gotta kind of come to terms with reality of what it is. Not everyone's having 100% across the board great days.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then just being able to see that, there are other things that can make you worthy, right? It's not just like what you own. It's not just money, materialistic things, right?
Yeah.
It's like health, and it's
Right.
freedom, like flexibility. It's liking your job. Like, who knows, this person that bought this amazing house is now feeling stuck at this job that they hate, but it
Yeah.
allows them to pay for this beautiful home. Like,
Right.
you just don't know everyone's situation.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I think,
Yeah.
work-wise has been a little bit rough, like the last couple of weeks, which is normal. I struggle with the idea of knowing that this just comes with the territory. It's like in sales, it's not 100% where, all 4 quarters are great quarters. You got some downsides. So when I'm in it every morning and I'm like, nothing is listed, my sellers aren't ready to list yet. My buyers don't want to, overpay like crazy or do whatever. And then like I go to like pick up like my daughter from daycare, and like she sees me and she gets all happy and she like runs over and hugs me. I thought about that for like 5 days after that happened, where I'm like, okay, there are good things that are happening right now.
Really
I just
good
need to
things.
balance, all the other stuff that's going on.
Yeah, kids are a really good way to ground us.
Yeah, I agree for sure. That's awesome. Katherine, thank you so much for coming on. Obviously, I appreciate it so much. I typically leave everything off with saying, as always, guys, subscribe, like, all that type of stuff. Comment if something along here was something that kind of made you, have a question or pop up. Leave a comment, ask the question. We'll go back into it. I think that we're going to do another one at your office and get maybe like a real estate agent perspective of things, and kind of go into that a little bit as well too. Also for you, if people want to reach out to you, hopefully you don't get flooded by people that have dealt with the buying and selling process and the anxieties that has come along with it. But do you want to give your info?
Yeah. So my office is located in Hillsborough, New Jersey. So the best way to contact me, you can look up my name, Katherine McCooe, on Psychology Today, or you can.
McCooe is MCCOOE. Yeah.
Yep. So you can look me up, Katherine McCooe, on Psychology Today. That's probably the best way, because then it'll just give you my number, my email. And I do take insurance. So I am in network with Blue Cross, United Healthcare, and Aetna. So
awesome.
Thanks for having me on here,
No, thank you
Cory.
for coming. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I really
Thanks.
appreciate it. Beautiful.